Well, hello there, and welcome to an Ignite Press book launch livecast. My name is Everett O'Keefe, and I am here today to introduce to you really a great guy who has written a book that it really wants to move the needle when it comes to leadership. And I will be bringing him on shortly. Now, I want to share with you that here at Ignite Press, we specialize in helping speakers, coaches, consultants, business executives, nonprofit executives get their messages out to the world. And if you have a book in mind that you would like to see come to the world, then please reach out to us at ignitepress.us. That's ignitepress.us. So now that's out of the way. Now we need to get to the main event. I want to bring on with you a really great guy, and this is Scott Burns. Scott Burns is the author of The Leader's Legacy, the 10 difference makers that set great leaders apart. So without any further ado, let's bring on the star, the VIP today here, Scott Burns. Scott, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you for the nice introduction. I appreciate it.
You're absolutely welcome. This is an exciting day. You've been working on this book for a long time, and the knowledge that you've gathered and that you're imparting here, you've been working on for a whole lot longer than that. Yeah. And so I'm excited that we're going to share this with everybody. Before we go further, though, tell us a bit about you. Tell us a bit about your background and where you come from.
Yeah, so I've been an executive coach for about 16 years or so, an ICF certified coach for the last couple 3 years. I began my career in leadership development, organizational development, role out of grad school way back when Arthur Andersen existed. Worked for Arthur Andersen for a little bit. Spent the next 30 years or so working for mostly Fortune 500 companies. The last 22 years worked as an HR executive, leadership development, organizational development specialist at Automatic Data Processing, ADP. A couple of years ago, I decided that I'd like to spend, call it the last 20, 30 years of my career focused on what I'm probably as passionate about as anything else, which is all things leadership. I'm fascinated by leadership in general, fascinated in particular about what makes the great leaders great. So I decided to start my own firm called The Leader's Legacy, where I focus on leadership development, consulting. I work with organizations to really help them to develop their talent strategies or leadership development strategies, and also as an executive coach. As I said, I'm an executive coach as well. So I've done that for the last couple of years, and just recently, as of today, and a published author as well. With The Leader's Legacy.
Absolutely. So, and I guess I would be remiss if I didn't tell people right now that The Leader's Legacy is available on Amazon, where you can pick it up there. The paperback is there, the Kindle is there, and the Kindle's on a special launch price of 99 cents. So you can pick that up there. Highly recommend you do that. Now, by the way, if you don't read books on Kindle typically, just know that you have a Kindle reader on your smartphone, on any tablet you own, and a reader available for any laptop or desktop computer that you own as well. So absolutely available there. So pick up your copy and, of course, share it with others. And one other thing I would be remiss in saying, and that is if you are watching this live, or if you were watching this in a recording, put your comments here. Go ahead and say hi. If you have any questions to pass on, I will do my best to bring them to Scott's attention as well. All right. Well, very good. So, Scott, The Leader's Legacy, I kind of want to cut straight to the chase on part of this. There's a specific leader in your life that has been a form of great inspiration to you, and I know is a really strong influence in this book. Who is that?
Yeah, and I have the good fortune of working with, coaching in some cases, a whole lot of pretty amazing leaders in my 30-year career. But it really started with my grandfather. My grandfather was, and I've worked with some amazing executives. I've worked with some amazing leaders. My grandfather was the best leader I've ever met in my life, and I will tell you there are several hundred people that I've had a chance to talk to over the last several years that say the same thing. But yeah, my grandfather was the mayor of our town, was the owner of the grocery store, and a leader among leaders for a large grocery organization in the way starting in the 50s and the 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way through the 90s. Passed away about 26 years or so ago. It's interesting. He was the inspiration for this book. In a lot of different ways. About 8 or 10 years ago, I started collecting some of my thoughts on what I've learned from some of the most outstanding leaders that I had worked for, and some of the advice that I had given and leadership lessons that I had given. What I noticed as I started kind of taking notes here and there is the best leaders that I worked with uh, led in the same way that my grandfather led. They were the best leaders are the smartest people in the room. They really empower people. But the thing that I noticed with the leaders that lead the most effectively and for the long run are the ones that not only are the work the hardest and are the smartest folks in the room, but they care deeply for the people that they develop and empower the organizations that they lead. They do what my grandfather used to say: leadership done right. And my grandfather um, had done that all of his life. The leaders that I worked with that did it the best led in exactly the same way my grandfather led, which is leadership done right. So, pretty inspirational guy. And I've had, the opportunity in this book to relive a number of lessons that I learned from my grandfather and from a number of other leaders that I worked with over the years. The other thing I had a chance to do is the book is not only leadership lessons, but I've had a chance to develop and remember some stories that really help demonstrate the leadership lessons, and a lot of those stories are from my grandfather. So I had a chance over the last several years as I was writing the book to spend a whole lot of time in my memory with my grandfather and a whole lot of other leaders as I developed some of those stories over the years. But my grandfather was an off the chart leader, an absolutely off the chart leader.
Well, and he sounds like a really inspiring man as well. And my guess is that his impact was felt. Well, it sounds like it was felt community wide. If he was mayor and also business leader as well.
Yeah.
Now, coming to your book, The Leader's Legacy, who did you write this for? Who really did you have in mind when you sat down to write this book?
Yeah, and you know, really leaders of all stripes. I've thought about that question ever. Is who's the audience that I want to speak to, both in my practice, but also in with this book. And as I went through the book, and I had a lot of different partners. It's phenomenal editors, phenomenal publisher that helped me along the way here, and Everett and his team, but also a number of beta readers that I tapped into as I was writing the book. And I asked that question several times. And the question I came up with myself and a number of other colleagues that helped me to really take a look at the book as I was writing it is there are leaders, there are brand new leaders who just joined the management staff, the leadership staff, and there are executives who could benefit from the lessons I learned from my grandfather, the lessons I learned from several general managers and executives that I worked with over the years, that really formed these what I call 10 leadership difference makers. So really leaders of all stripes. I would say is really the audience that I think could benefit from the leadership book.
Well, and I appreciate that because leaders do come in all shapes and forms, and they aren't all they don't all sit in the C-suite. In fact, most of them don't, right?
Yep.
And many people are leaders, even if they're leading just one other person.
Yep.
Oh, I appreciate that.
You know,
Now,
the other part about that, you mentioned all kinds of leaders. I some of the most effective leaders that I've worked with were informal leaders over the years. They weren't necessarily leaders of leaders or leaders of teams, but they were the people that everyone followed. And so they teach us some good leadership lessons as well.
um, now, I'm gonna skip to a question that came in. Zelda actually asks here. Let me put the question up on the screen. How do you envision readers benefiting from the book? What do you hope that they'll take away from it?
I'd go back to my grandfather saying, learning about leadership done right. Part of what, I came to the title of the book of the leader's legacy and the really the name of my practice as well. As I was writing it, among other things, um, if I'm a leader who's passionate about being the best leader that I can possibly be, there are a number of things that I can focus on. There are a number of things that I can do to build my leadership legacy. And you build your leadership legacy every day. So what I think leaders can benefit from as they're reading this book, and anyone reading this book, is learning about how I can lead in such a way that I can have the best impact that I can have. What I'd like to do is have folks that read this book really learn a little bit about how they can make their part of the world a better place for how well that they lead it. So I think that can benefit the leaders. I've designed the book in such a way that there are um, leadership lessons, and I've broken down the essential leadership lessons again into the 10 different leadership difference makers that really help you build your leadership legacy. The book is also in a number of different places. Allow the reader and encourage the reader to I place in some exercises where you can apply what you've learned to your own leadership journey, to your own leadership. But the other thing it is I mentioned before, it is full of stories. Um, I think we learn best from the stories that we have in our lives. And life is all about, from my perspective, my grandfather, by the way, was the best storyteller that I've ever met as well. And life is all about stories. So I think the readers of this will be able to really understand the important concepts that are a part of this, the important leadership lessons here. When they'll remember the stories that are in the book, and remember the leadership lessons as well. So a lot of things. Hopefully, there's a lot of things they take away.
Well, in fact, I want to get to some of those. You talk about 10 difference makers that set great leaders apart. What are some of those difference makers?
Yeah, and it starts with really a couple of different things. It is, and again, part of what I learned from my grandfather and the executives that were just the most effective that I worked with is it starts with knowing yourself and being true to yourself. It starts with integrity and what your leadership values are. So having a really good understanding of what's important to you and what's important to the people that you and the organizations that you lead. So that is seminally important. What I learned over the years, I had the good fortune in my 30 years of selecting, and particularly the last call it 2 dozen years, I served on a number of senior teams, and each of the senior leaders that was chosen, either whether they came from outside the organization or moved up from frontline managers into senior leaders. I interviewed each of the candidates that were to for each of those senior leadership roles. And one of the things that I noticed throughout the selection process and the succession management process, and really thinking fast forward 10 years later and being a part of those senior leaders' journeys is the most effective leaders wake up in the morning and go to sleep at night really thinking about how they can take care of their people, empower their people, how they can take care of their organizations, their customers, their communities. So they wake up in the morning and go to sleep at night, really deeply caring, and you can tell. You could tell in an interview process. Honestly, I talk a little bit about that in the book. Whether you've got a leader in front of you that truly cares about a wide swath of people, including caring about their own leadership, including caring about how can they invest not only in the folks that they are charged with leading and empowering and engaging, but also invest in their own leadership. The old adage of, put your mask on first, in the airport, in the airplane. If you invest in your own leadership continually, you can help other people as well. So
Yeah, and in fact, that's where I wanted to go into, because I think very many people, I mean, we see it all the time. They fall into a place of leadership without any training whatsoever, right? It's just they get promoted, they start a company, they do any number of things without any training whatsoever. And in fact, one of the watchers here had asked this question, and it seems absolutely appropriate, and that is, Andrew Ross says, how can this book help guide a junior leader or a first-time leader? So let's dive into that a little bit.
yeah, I've had the good fortune also in my career, as I focused on leaders of helping leaders with who are going through transition, and that transition could mean a lot of different things. There are leaders who are moving into new organizations or leading a new team, but also, there's seminal work that's done in terms of building your own leadership when you move into a leadership role for the first time. So I had at the last company I worked at, I helped to build what we called a new leader training program. So part of what I did, and we had a chance to roll this out over, probably 600 or 800 new leaders over a half dozen years or so. And I learned a lot along the way, and I put some of that in terms of learned a lot in terms of what it takes, and what you can focus on to be a new leader, to be effective in your new leadership role. A couple of things that learned along the way is among other things, I'll focus on a couple of things. You really focus on building a network. Really focus on really reaching out there and asking other leaders in the organization about what it takes to be an effective leader, and establishing those relationships. That helps, among other things, to establish the relationships. And the relationships are the second thing I'd focus on. Relationships are key to what you do in any role, but it's much more important in a leadership role. The resources that you make, the relationships that you form, are going to be the backbone of how successful you are as a leader in any organization that you work for. And there's a whole lot of other things too, but those are a couple that raise to the top for me.
Excellent. Let me go ahead and put this up again, because it is appropriate. Definitely, if you're interested in picking up a copy of The Leader's Legacy, you can grab it today at Amazon, where the Kindle version is on a special launch price of 99 cents. So grab a copy, and I think also grab a couple copies, because there are other people in your life that are in leadership positions or hope to be in leadership positions, and this is really a great book for them. And I think that's one of the things I'm appreciating most about your book here, is that I think it's appropriate for leaders, whether they are new or experienced, because of the lessons that you're sharing. You're talking about leading with values. You're talking about investing in your leadership, like we were just talking about. And I think a perfect example, invest in leadership by getting training in leadership, right? And this is absolutely one of those. We had another question come in that I thought was good. I want to share. And that is, Malia says, I know you include quite a few stories in your book. Do you have a favorite leadership success story? Now, by the way, this is hard. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
your very favorite. It just has to be a favorite.
Yeah, there's probably there's a, you know, the stories of my grandfather come to mind. And this is, among other things, kind of part memoir of my grandfather and a whole lot of other leaders that I worked with. But probably the one story that comes to mind is I was probably 10, 12 years old, and my uh, grandfather and I were watching Detroit Tigers baseball. We grew up in Michigan, so watching Detroit Tigers baseball game, and he casually inserted into the story. And my grandfather had been mayor for probably half dozen years at that point. Been on city. He'd been taking care of his town for years, a couple of decades at that point. But he had talked about talking about a scout. He said, my senior year of high school, he was the star pitcher and everything else. I got a visit from one of them scouts. Tigers scouts came and offered me a contract to go play baseball in the minor leagues and my grandfather loved baseball. He thought about it. He took he took the contract home, talked to his mother. He was he was he was the youngest of his family. His father had passed away, and he had some taken care of to do. So he came back, unfortunately, didn't have a major league baseball career, but he came back and called the scout about a week or so later and said, you know what, I need to stay here and take care of my mother, and I need to take care of my town. He fast forwarded and he said, I got a visit like that about 40 years later from when I was a mayor for 4 or 5 years. A couple of years ago, I got the visit from the governor's office. State of Michigan was retiring, and he said, and they were coming down and asking if I'd run for governor. And I said to them at the time, you know what, I've got a town to take care of. And I think I can have the most impact here, staying as mayor of Ionia here. So he passed up some nice opportunities because he cared that much about his town, his community, and everybody in it. So it's a nice lesson, and it paid off pretty well. My grandfather was extraordinarily successful at what he did, and he had a tremendous impact on a lot of folks because he made some important decisions about how much he cared about the people that were in front of him.
That's related to actually a question I wanted to ask you. Is one of the things you put in your book there is that great leaders keep perspective.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
Yeah, it's one of the things I've noticed in the years working with my senior teams is those leaders who do well really understand, among other things, that just about everything that they touch every day, and they have an impact on 2 or 3 dozen things on a daily basis. But the decisions that they make, the people that they impact, the processes and procedures that they impact, just about everything that they touch is doesn't just impact the person that they're having a conversation with, that the person in front of them, or just doesn't just impact their team or even their broader team. But the great leaders really understand the perspective of everything that they touch, among other things, has an impact on a wide swath of people. And this is a learned skill, particularly for newer managers and even newer senior leaders, is what that means for an effective leader is they need to really keep in mind those 15, 16, 18 different people and different organizations that they're going to be impacting with the decisions that they make. So that's one example of you got to keep a broad perspective. What you impact is not just what's in front of you, but you keep the perspective of all the people and all the organizations that you impact.
You actually put a quote in here from Toni Morrison that I wanted to read. Now, this is page 69 of the Leader's Legacy. Laughter is a way of taking the reins into your own hands. What made you think of that? Why that quote here as we talk about perspective?
First of all, Toni Morrison was one of the most amazing writers on the planet, so I wanted to find a way to get her into the book. And I noticed early in my career, I practiced this quite a bit as a leader here. Humor is an essential. And humor is about perspective. Yeah, keeping things in perspectives. There are times when the fire gets up hot and I was having conversations with an executive has all kinds of different things going on. You need to take those situations very, very seriously. But there are times when, inserting lots of perspectives, and then sometimes, inserting a little bit of humor, a little bit of laughter into the situation can help clear your head and help you to be effective in what you're doing. So, the doctors will tell you laughter is extraordinarily good medicine, by the way.
Yeah, and if in the midst of all the storms and the slings and arrows, if you can sit back and laugh, right? What a change that makes. Um, so I'll tell you, we only have a couple minutes left here, Scott, and I'm excited about your book and your launch. If people want to reach you directly, if they want to talk to you about leadership, talk to you about your book, engage you for speaking, or engage your company,
Yep.
what's the best way for them to reach you?
You can certainly send it to my email, and in the book, there are in several places I put the hyperlink for my website, so you can reach me through my website. But you can also contact me, directly through my email. My email is leadership.sfburns@yahoo.com. I have a telephone number as well, 630-432-9138. And there, feel free to reach out if you're interested in learning about what we do as executive coaches, and how it can help your organization to really focus on building really impactful leadership strategies for your organization as well.
Okay, and I'm actually going to put your website out there too, if you don't mind. I'll
Great.
put that in the chat log so that people can reach that. Well, I'll tell you, it's a joy to work with you on this. It's exciting to see this book finally come to fruition. Um, you know, as I think about the impact, I mean, here you are trying to share generational impact.
Yeah.
Right. Multi-generational. We talk about your grandfather, and here you are passing it on, and you're passing it to another generation.
Yeah.
I think that you talk about, especially when you're talking about leading with values,
Yeah.
I think that that's just so critical in what you're doing here. Scott, are there any last thoughts that you'd like to leave people with before we sign off?
Yeah, just on that point, part of what I noticed along the way, even as I was writing the book, is to your point, there are some really foundational things that you need to focus on as a leader. But the other thing that I noticed, and this weaves its way through the book here, is I've noticed that the great leaders really understand, both the common and some uncommon things that you might think about in terms of being impactful as a leader. And so the book is full of some of those things. So I appreciate that point, Everett. Yeah, the last thing I'd say is that, I appreciate, Everett, the work that the partnership, the relationship that I've had with you and your team at Ignite Press. It's been fantastic. You've allowed me, among other things, to do a really effective job of getting the message out on leadership done right with this book. So very much appreciated.
Well, I'll tell you what, thank you very much. And back to you. Thank you for entrusting us with what really is a sacred message. And we don't take that trust lightly. And I just am grateful that you saw fit to bring the manuscript to us and that you helped let us carry it to market. So
Yep.
thank you so much, Scott.
Absolutely.
Well, everybody, there you go. Scott Burns and The Leader's Legacy. Please pick up your copy at Amazon today. And if you find yourself with a message that you would like to share to the world, a message to help change the world, and perhaps also a message at the same time to help build your business and brand, reach out to us at ignitepress.us. That's ignitepress.us. And you can schedule a consultation with us there, and I will sit down with you personally, talk with you about your message and your book. Again, pick up your copy of The Leader's Legacy at Amazon today. Thank you so much for joining us on this livecast.